and the quote-unquote USSR bringing freedom, did they bring freedom to Eastern Europe?
No, they brought mass murder and death.
You have to understand, they did the same thing to Eastern Europe that America did to Central America and to the Caribbean.
They colonized it.
Colonized it, took it over, and said, you know what, we're going to make you dependent on us, to the point that they can still shut off the gas in the Ukraine 5 years ago. Oh, do you have a problem? There you go. What's your problem now? Oh, you have an issue with me and something I'm saying? Cool. You know, I'm going to put polonium in a pellet, and I'm going to put it into your body, and you're going to die of cancer a week later. Don't toy with me. Don't play with me. You know, they give specific examples of people, and the CIA was complicit in the killing of an archbishop of the Catholic Church, Romero, in El Salvador. And yet, even though he was made a saint, there's no gigantic backlash against the government and against them being there in present-day times, because they've forgotten that history. And I think when you remind them of that and you show them this is the blueprint, in the same way that you point out historical facts from a timeline for people, you know, when you speak to them in plain language and you say, hey, listen, this is real. This actually happened. This is not a fraud. You know, this is not a conspiracy. When people talk to me about 9/11 and they say, hey, you know, how can you not believe the government story? And I always say, listen, I am not sitting here saying that I know exactly what happened, but you know what? I will say this much. I cannot believe the government because they couldn't tell the truth about the air to breathe to people. That's the simplest thing in the world.
That's it. If they've been caught lying over and over and over again and caught doing false flags, you've got to question it. But breaking that down, sure, you've had colonial powers, and the British had the most successful model, so it's been adopted by the corporations. And I mean,
reinforced with religion, reinforced with neoliberalism now, reinforced.
Sure, well, that's their cover.
Right.
I mean, it's like giving Obama a Peace Prize. But what I'm saying is, now they put out that Dinesh D'Souza film, and I interviewed him, and he's saying Obama is anti-colonialist. That's why he's doing all this stuff, and it's the opposite. Obama has a CIA cover as an anti-colonialist, but clearly his job is to bring in global corporate colonialism that's so powerful now. The banks are above the law. They issue the money, and they're going to dissolve the countries and even the old empires into one global empire. And then what's its ideology? You know, other empires were domination, total control, but most empires, unless it was Hitler and what he tried to establish, the Neo-Germanic Empire, did not want to exterminate everybody. That had been done some with the natives in some of the areas, but this is a eugenics-based exterminism, which isn't fair to say ultra-Hitlerian, because Hitler got his ideas from these people. So how do you talk to the left, the right, the people that are into native rights, people that are UN stuff, when all of it's a projection of a global corporate takeover?
Because they have these ideas based on mainstream media about who we're fighting against. You know, for example, if you tell the average American we're not at war with radical Islam, they think you're crazy. They say, oh, no, we're not at war with communism. They think you're insane until you say, hey, wait a minute. We're not at war with radical Islam, because who's our biggest ally in the region? Saudi Arabia. Their brand of Wahhabism is like the Taliban with money, and they have the influence to interfere in Syria. They have their.
I was going to say
they have their little.
How does the left put up with it?
All right, then what about communism? When they say, oh, we're not against communism. Oh, how could you say that? Who's our biggest economic partner?
China.
China. So you know who we're really at war with, and I tell people all the time, we're at war with people that say no to us, no to the agenda of the people who run behind government.
It's a mafia.
That's technically how it is. I mean, if we don't give access to natural resources as a third world entity, we find ourselves on a hit list. You know, you find yourself being persecuted, being brought down.
If you try to be sovereign.
It doesn't matter if you're a communist government, or it doesn't matter if you are a capitalist entity that just wants a little more of the slice. They'll portray you, one, as a Stalinist, or two, they'll portray you as a kleptocracy, when in reality, who were you stealing money for? You. We just didn't want to cut you in anymore because you felt like, as America, you weren't doing enough to get your slice. The same way people were ignorant about France and Iraq when they said, oh, the French are soft, we're going to eat freedom fries. I'm like, the French are war masters. They've been involved in every major battle in the world since they had it out with Attila the Hun. I mean, I think...
And then once we took it over, they got that oil.
Well, the only thing was this. when Sykes-Picot, which you're an intelligent man, but for people that don't know out there, Sykes-Picot was a treaty that was signed before World War I, where they decided to carve up the Middle East. France's slice was Lebanon and Syria. England's slice was Iraq and Egypt and all the rest of that. When it came down to it, the French were like, dude, that's not my problem. America, you inherited that issue.
No, that's right. And now who's behind Libya? Who's behind Syria? Their slice, it was France, because it's next door to Tunisia. You're absolutely right. And see, you've done your research.
The UN as their little, like the UN is all of a sudden there to save them from Gaddafi, as if he wasn't used by them for their purposes before.
Well, see, that's what's so refreshing is that you've actually done research when even 95% of people that think they're research don't know all this. That is what is so frustrating, is that they put Obama in. Webster Tarpley predicted all this in the Obama deception 4.5 years ago. He said they're going to attack Africa. They're going to put in AFRICON. He named all the countries. They're going to take out Gaddafi. Because
say that again for the people. Who was that guy?
Webster Tarpley.
Webster Tarpley. You see, that's what I mean. That's how hip-hop is. Slow the record down, bring it back. Webster Tarpley. Go look that up, ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there.
Well, exactly. But, I mean, he laid it all out. We knew it was going to happen. And it's so diabolical that they're carrying extermination operations all over Africa. They've been for 25 months attacking Syria, killing the Muslim minorities, killing the Christians, blowing up mosques, churches. And then you read the New York Times, it'll say, more car bombs. They called for Assad to leave, and never even in the article say Western-backed rebels did it. It implies Assad did it. I mean, how does the so-called left get behind putting al-Qaeda in Libya and Syria run by Saudi Arabia?
Well, the same way that they don't go into outrage when they find out that an entity like HSBC was caught out there laundering money for splinter cells of al-Qaeda. In other words, people that are out there dedicated to killing Americans, whether or not it's a fake op or not, people really are
Wells Fargo laundering the drug money.
Troops are dying out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can talk to American families at home that don't have their mom or dad or uncle or brother coming home. People are dying, and HSBC, who some of you are going to, who unfortunately I still have a small amount of money in, which I'm going to pull out when I get home. After I read these articles, I look at this and I say to myself, these people did this and they got a $2 billion fine, which for them, and it's the equivalent of you and me taking a penny out of our pocket and throwing it on the table.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing when they caught 3 years ago, over 2 years before. This is 5 years ago, but in 2 years, $378 billion. Guys, pull up $378 billion drug money laundered by Wachovia, Wells Fargo, and they got a $111 million fine. We did the math. What's $111 million out of $378 billion? I mean, it's something like if I robbed a bank and had $1 million, the cops came and I gave them $3,000. And so the issue is they have created al-Qaeda to control the real Arab fervor who's been wronged, so they can control the opposition. And then the low-level al-Qaeda doesn't even know they're globalists, but the high-level guys are CIA, MI6, Mossad, Pakistani intelligence, and that's how they control the whole thing and have the pretext to invade.
Without making it as complicated as that, for the people that are at home watching, it's the old premise of them telling you, you know what, we're locking up the little drug dealers to get the big guy. No, you're not. You want to get the big guy so that he can rat out all the little guys and all of them can go to jail because they justify this system for him. The big drug dealer, he's not going to go to jail. He's the one with the $2 million lawyer. You're the fool on the ground, the zealot, the pack flipper, the crack seller whose lifestyle is glorified in music, and yet you're not getting the benefits of this gigantic, you know, chemical drug industry. That
Look at the opium production.
Right. Who's getting that paper?
10% of world production in 2001 was in Afghanistan. Now it's 93.
It's insane.
And when they get caught, they have the troops growing it and go, yeah, we grow it. Hide the elephant in the room, move on. But specifically, Second Amendment, tell me where you stand on that.
You're never going to ban guns in this country. You know what I mean? I mean, you can read the Dick Act of 1902. I mean, we're talking about it being against the Constitution for them to do that. Did people misuse this as a tool? Yes. You know, did someone try to blow themselves up on a plane? Yes. Whether it was a shoe bomber or a guy with a grenade strapped to his underwear, we all have to go through screening now because of that. And do I agree with people being screened and having to take like to have some sort of mental capacity to own a weapon like this? Yes, absolutely. However, I always tell people that before we get into an alarmist position, if the government wants to attack you, for example, people in New York, I tell them, they don't have to take away your guns. They can just turn the water off. Can the average person in New York drink out of the Hudson? Can they drink out of the East River? No. They control every other resource about your life.
And that's why they want you so dependent. Guns are kind of the vestigial sign of one of the last freedoms we've got, and I could go through the issues of...
No. Also, my, not to interrupt you, my big shout out to my friend Dave Gomez, Chief Warrant Officer. We had this conversation, and I said, you know, what good would, you know, light arms like an AR-15 be against a division of heavily armored troops that came in? Like, in other words, what good would your pea shooters be? And he said to me, it's working really well for those people in Afghanistan. They don't have advanced weaponry. It's the willingness to die. It's the
willingness to resist.
Look how frightened they were of a guy like Chris Dorner. One man, regardless of whether you or I think that story is true or the public does, one man, he wasn't armed with bazookas and tanks.
The police were so scared they shot up multiple innocent people, were hyperventilating in fear, and then said, we're going to burn it down, burned it down,
right,
and then told us you didn't hear that.
And anyone that would dare to question whether the government was corrupt or not, or whether his position was right, is automatically painted as if they support murder, right? The reality is this: when you kill someone without due process, that's murder. The cops basically went in there and murdered him. Did he murder people? Absolutely. Was he wrong for that? Yes. Did they want him alive? No. Because if they got him alive and he stood trial, I think it would have been the end of it. I think that people would have been like, are you kidding me? Is this guy about to blow the lid on how fascist this system has become, on how people have been trained to think this way? And I know we always talk about Nazi Germany, but the Germans were not animals, Alex. They were human beings. They were conditioned. You know, when you read the stories of the SS officers that were given a puppy, you know what I mean, to have during their time in the academy.
And they had to kill it.
And the last order is shoot the puppy in the head. Unflinching, absolute loyalty, unquestioning to what they think is the republic, to what they think is what is supposed to be the...
And it was done by increments, just like we become so evil by increment. A little bit more, right. Rationalize, give into it, and pretty soon...
Which is why I was happy to hear you clarify that stance on immigration, because I always tell people, if they're going to come at people, who do you think they're going to test it on? People that you already think are, if your position...
Yeah, but I went with Jesse Ventura, where they've got the immigrants illegally locked up, and I've called for that not to happen.
Right, but no, but I'm just saying, I'm glad you clarified that.
But you have to, it's two-way street. They're going to use the immigrants in their liberation theology control system as another weapon. You understand the globalists play all sides.
But liberation, even liberation theology, if you want to talk about it, is the idea that it's an idea that was taken from a real...
No, I know. Way, and that's what I just said, the thing.
And then turned
the
over.
Thing.
Right.
No, I understand
Whatever
that.
You run to, they take it over. It's like, but I think that's the nature of a corporation. When people talk to me about Illuminati, and they say, oh, Illuminati's so scary, I said, you don't have to use hypotheticals. You want to talk about people behind closed doors who make decisions about your life and what they're going to sell you that may be killing you. That's Walmart. That's, you know, Honeywell next door. These people that are here that will say, we're going to make these decisions. You have no power over it. We can hide behind the fact that we're a person and a corporation, even though we technically can't go to prison.
Yeah, it's McDonald's down the street. It's you know,
it's Burger King horse meat. You know what I mean?
And horse meat's nothing. They've got us so worried about horse meat. And then meanwhile, they've got bromine in the Gatorade, baby parts in the Pepsi. Right. And that's the thing about Bayer. You know, it came out about a decade ago that for 11 years, they knowingly put HIV and hepatitis in millions of ampules of factor VIII, killing hundreds of thousands of hemophiliacs. And it came out in the trials, because France was one of the ones that had trials about it. It was a worldwide corporation. They actually said, well, these are infirm people, get rid of them anyways. It wasn't just we're cold-blooded and going to sell people something that kills them, we don't care. It's more than that. It's more than that.
But I think
they get off on it.
The people who run this society, they present themselves as moral leaders. They present themselves as if, you know what, in my family, you know, we would never do what these ordinary plebeians are doing out in the street, when in fact they're the most perverse out of anybody.
Well, no, that's the psyop. That's why I have to wear this to get people to even pay more attention, but this is a uniform. And then you wear this uniform and you look like the uniform, then people actually listen to you, but that's the whole deal. The men that dress like this don't do anything wrong. The truth is, it's the guys that dress like this are doing almost all the bad stuff.
Right, and I always tell people, when you see somebody selling their body for money in the street, it's obvious. They're showcasing